A full-scale war is emerging from behind the political smokescreen as tensions between Iran and the United States escalate. A chaotic picture is unfolding within Iran, with 16 provinces experiencing severe unrest. Protests have turned violent, blood has been spilled, and 5 lives have been claimed in what appear to be executions or cold-blooded killings. The situation has escalated to unprecedented levels, with analysts predicting that a strategic misstep from either side could ignite a full-blown war across the Middle East. Will Washington continue its ramifications, or will its confrontational policies push everyone to the brink of no return? Amidst the chaos engulfing Iran across 16 provinces, the Tehran government unexpectedly issued an ultimatum that sent shivers down the world's spine. Any action by the United States threatening Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be considered a public declaration of war. This was no longer a veiled threat or a typical diplomatic warning, but a clear statement drawing an inviolable red line. With internal tensions running high, Iran cannot afford to let its symbol of ultimate power be challenged, and Washington is now forced to carefully consider every step if it wants to avoid igniting a full-scale confrontation. As tensions in the Middle East reach a peak, a series of rumors from international intelligence channels has left observers on edge. President Donald Trump is reportedly planning a lightning strike on key Iranian facilities. If this materializes, it would no longer be a mere deterrent, but the beginning of a large-scale military campaign that could shake the entire regional security structure. Not only Iran, but also its allies and rivals in the region could be drawn into the vortex, facing economic collapse and strategic chaos if the order to fire is given from Washington. Is this the final move in President Donald Trump's power game? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a question that is gripping the world. Will Iran be able to withstand the overwhelming power of the U.S. military, or will this Islamic nation be crushed by the planet's most advanced war machine? Iran is currently like a pressure cooker, teetering on the edge of a fire. The latest intelligence reports reveal that a wave of protests and unrest is sweeping across 16 provinces. Numerous deaths and a surge in executions paint a bloody and unstable picture not seen since the Islamic Revolution. Meanwhile, across the ocean, the Pentagon maintains its dominance with a super-modern arsenal ranging from aircraft and Ford-class aircraft carriers to B-2 bombers. If coal is used, the consequences could be a devastating firestorm. The casualty figures are not just inanimate data. They represent real lives extinguished by the iron fist of the Tehran regime. In a country once considered the cradle of Middle Eastern civilization, gunfire, screams, and desperate silence have become the symphony of daily life. Why did this happen? Because the people have suffered for too long. From economic inflation and widespread unemployment to harsh policies that suppress freedom, resentment has accumulated like a ticking time bomb. But instead of listening or making concessions, the government chose to react like totalitarian regimes, tightening its grip, repressing more severely, deploying the army and security forces to the streets, and turning cities into fortresses of terror against the people. The atmosphere in Iran is no longer calm. It's the terrifying calm before a storm. Tensions are escalating hourly, and all signs point to a full-blown explosion. Instead of acknowledging mistakes from its security forces, the Tehran regime has chosen a different path, directly targeting the United States. Iranian leaders did not blame the police, but instead declared that Washington was the mastermind behind all the protests, a soft war campaign aimed at overthrowing the regime from within without shedding a single drop of American blood. The statement further intensified the already tense atmosphere within the Iranian political establishment. The anger from the leadership quickly escalated into fury, accompanied by threats of strategic counterattack if there was evidence of outside interference. The question is Iran preparing a retaliatory strike targeting U.S. interests in the region? Or is this merely a tactic to divert public attention from the domestic crisis? Iran's judiciary has just issued a statement that has shaken the international community. The recent executions fall under the framework of the so-called killing for destabilization. Under this pretext, anyone who dares to speak out against the government, or even just suspected of having ties to foreign countries, especially the United States, can be publicly executed by hanging. This is no longer a confrontation between the state and the protesters. This is a systematic purge campaign in which the lines between criminality and dissent are almost completely blurred. Resistance is labeled treason, and treason becomes grounds for execution without lengthy trials. The nightmare of an authoritarian state is becoming a stark reality, and the Iranian people are now forced to live under a regime where death can come with a single word. While Tehran was busy purging and eliminating those labeled as internal enemies, Washington, on the other side of the globe, seemed anything but still. Regional intelligence noted suspicious signals, covert military movements, and secret meetings between top Pentagon commanders and strategic allies in the Gulf region. U.S. officials have yet to announce specific plans, but everything points to one thing. As Iran consolidates its power through bloodshed and violence, the United States may be preparing a response, not only diplomatically, but possibly with more forceful deterrence. On the Middle Eastern chessboard, every move carries the scent of gunpowder. Leaked reports have shaken international observers, suggesting President Donald Trump is planning a surprise military campaign directly targeting Iran. His tough stance against the Islamic regime in Iran has never wavered, and if the situation continues to escalate, military action is entirely possible. Recall the shocking moment of 2020 when President Donald Trump personally ordered the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, the supreme commander of the Iranian armed forces. That precise, almost surgical strike shook the entire Middle East and clearly demonstrated his uncompromising stance against threats to U.S. security. Now, with Iran reeling from internal instability, is President Trump preparing to replicate an even more powerful and audacious deterrent? As President Donald Trump returns to the political arena with a formidable presence, the Middle East is once again, it has become the focus of global warnings. Strategic signals suggest that this plan is not just a show of force. It could be a preemptive strike designed to neutralize Iran's nuclear threat before things spiral out of control. Unlike previous presidents who stopped in January, President Trump acted swiftly when he assassinated General Qasem Soleimani. And now, a new, seemingly even more decisive step is being taken, proactively preventing Iran from reaching nuclear weapons. The world is facing a moment that could completely change the geopolitical landscape in the Middle East, as the United States is not waiting to be attacked, but acting first, and Iran is no longer maintaining a defensive stance. Amid reports of a potential U.S. preemptive strike, MAS President Pezeshkian officially issued what was considered an ultimatum. Any military action targeting Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be deemed a declaration of war. This was no ordinary political threat. Given Iran's highly authoritarian and militaristic system of power, Ayatollah Khamenei is the supreme and untouchable symbol. If Washington crosses this red line, the consequences could be a full-scale war on multiple fronts, from the Strait of Hormuz to Iran's proxy network throughout the region. President Pezeshkian's statement was not only aimed at defending the leader, but also served as a signal to the entire world. Iran is prepared to retaliate at all costs. The entire Middle East is currently on high alert. Escalating developments from both Washington and Iran are pushing the region to the brink of a full-scale war. And when Iran uses the word full-scale, it's not just empty rhetoric in the media. That was the trigger for an entire network of proxy forces that have been nurtured for decades. From Hezbollah in Lebanon to Haiti in Yemen, Iran's extended arms could ignite numerous fronts overnight. Furthermore, Iran now possesses thousands of ballistic missiles with a range that can reach most U.S. military bases across the Middle East, from Iraq, Qatar, and Bahrain to the United Arab Emirates. A surprise attack from Iran would not only cripple military infrastructure, but also trigger a chain reaction across the region. The United States was not inferior in firepower and was even superior in technology and precision strike capabilities. The scenario, planned from the Pentagon, began with a lightning-fast nighttime air campaign, deploying stealth aircraft like the B-2 and F-35, along with hundreds of cruise missiles launched from warships to neutralize Iran's advanced radar and air defense systems. However, this challenge far surpasses anything seen in Iraq or Libya. Iran not only possesses a large-scale defense force, but also a rugged, mountainous terrain with numerous military and strategic facilities built deep underground beyond the destructive range of conventional bombs. This means that if the United States wants to cripple Iran in the initial stages, it will have to deploy super powerful penetrating bombs, high-altitude strategic weapons, and accept the possibility of significant losses. Because of Iran's unique defense structure and its ability to resist for an extended period, any surprise attack from outside risks turning into a protracted war of attrition, where the concept of an absolute victor does not exist. In that scenario, the Middle East would be drawn into an endless cycle of violence. In that context, the widespread mass executions in at least 16 provinces are not spontaneous acts, but part of a calculated, cold-blooded strategy of social control. The Tehran authorities are using fear as a tool of governance to stifle any seeds of resistance from the very beginning. The core objective is clear: to ensure absolute silence in the event of war breaking out outside its borders. When bombs rain down from the outside, the Iranian government wants to make sure that there will be no internal rebellion to disrupt the power structure. The entire society must be placed in a state of absolute obedience to the Supreme Leader, without doubt, without resistance, without alternative choice. The mass executions and brutal repression in Iran not only create domestic fear, but also provide the United States with the perfect pretext to accuse Iran of being a brutal authoritarian regime that must be removed from the international order. From President Donald Trump's perspective, the doctrine is clear: peace through strength. This is not a slogan, but a practical course of action, demonstrated by campaigns to eliminate high-ranking targets, such as General Qasem Soleimani. However, constantly pushing tensions to the limit can lead to unintended consequences. What is called peace sometimes becomes the beginning of a widespread cycle of chaos, where conflict, retaliation, and proxy wars become the new normal in the Middle East. According to military experts, if attacked unexpectedly, Iran could easily activate a counterattack scenario without firing a single shot by blockading the Strait of Hormuz. With this single action, Iran could destabilize the global economy without launching a single missile. The Strait of Hormuz, a strategically crucial shipping choke point, carries nearly 1/3 of the world's traded oil. Any disruption in this region could cause crude oil prices to skyrocket, paralyze global supply chains, and plunge international financial markets into a chain reaction of crises. The blockade of Hormuz is not just retaliation. It's a warning from Iran that it still holds extremely dangerous strategic leverage, capable of shaking the entire global economic order. The Strait of Hormuz is not only a strategic body of water, but also one of the vital oil shipping lanes of the modern world. Every day, more than 1/3 of global oil production passes through this choke point, connecting the Gulf oil fields to international markets. If Iran carries out its threat to blockade Hormuz, the consequences would extend far beyond the Middle East. Global oil prices can skyrocket in just hours, triggering a chain reaction of price increases for gasoline, energy, food, and essential goods, directly impacting the economies of countries like the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, and the entire Asia-Pacific region. Therefore, the confrontation between President Donald Trump and Tehran is no longer simply a conflict between two nations. This is the trigger point for a global economic and security crisis that could spread exponentially. Tehran's warning about protecting Supreme Leader Khamenei is not merely a political threat to Iranian society. Khamenei is more than just the head of the political system. He is a sacred religious icon, the embodiment of the Shia branch of Islam. Any action against him would not only be seen as a political assassination, but also as a direct insult to the very foundation of religion that touches the soul of an entire nation. Therefore, when the Iranian government declared that attacking the leader constituted a declaration of war, it was an uncrossable red line. In the event of an invasion, Iran's response would not be to retreat or negotiate, but a full-scale retaliation fueled by a fervent jihadist spirit, drawing in numerous proxy systems across the Middle East. If conflict were to erupt in the 34th Gulf, Iran would almost certainly not choose a direct confrontation with the U.S. Navy. Instead, strategists believe that Iran will deploy asymmetric weapons, suicide drones, and swarms of high-speed suicide attack boats, directly targeting U.S. aircraft carriers. This is not a tactic devised in recent years. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran has actively developed a doctrine of asymmetric warfare, using small forces against larger ones, employing a network of naval guerrilla fighters, Suicide drones can attack in waves, causing significant damage without direct confrontation. The narrow and easily lockable waters of Gulf 34 are ideal terrain for this tactic, and in that scenario, even a U.S. supercarrier wouldn't be completely safe. Since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran's military doctrine has revolved around a single overarching goal: to defeat the great evil, a metaphor for the United States. While Washington focuses on technological power, Iran has chosen a different path: asymmetrical warfare. Instead of seeking direct confrontation like in Hollywood movies, Iran's strategy is designed to attack the opponent's unconventional weaknesses, including disrupting the logistical chain and cutting off supply links to U.S. bases throughout the Middle East. At the same time, Iran uses proxy forces to indirectly attack close U.S. allies such as Israel and Saudi Arabia, diverting the enemy's resources and forcing them to fight on multiple fronts. Another crucial element is disrupting strategic trade routes, such as the Strait of Hormuz or the Red Sea, where a single attack could cripple global energy transport. Iran understands that it doesn't need to fire directly at Washington. Simply disrupting America's global network of interests would be as effective as a frontal strike. President Donald Trump has always maintained a clear stance. Strength is the language Iran will have to back down from. For him, if the United States displays sufficient power through its aircraft carriers, stealth bombers, and bases throughout the Middle East, Iran will soon weaken and withdraw from confrontation. But what is happening within Iran reveals a completely different reality. A series of widespread executions, brutal crackdowns on civilians and military personnel who oppose its policies, show that the Iranian regime is willing to sacrifice the lives of its own people to maintain power and prepare for a confrontation without compromise. In this picture, the world is no longer a passive observer. Every political and military decision today carries the risk of igniting a global storm whose effects no one can escape. Recent intelligence reports indicate that Iran is closer than ever to possessing nuclear weapons. Many uranium enrichment systems have reached the necessary technical levels, while production and research facilities are located deep underground, making destruction from the outside extremely difficult. This is why President Donald Trump believes that early action is necessary. According to the RAND doctrine, preemptive action means that stopping Iran before it can successfully assemble an atomic bomb is the only way to protect the United States' strategic advantage in the Middle East. However, for Iran, the nuclear program is not simply a scientific goal, but is seen as national life insurance, an absolute deterrent shield capable of preventing any enemy from taking action. In the current confrontation, neither side is willing to compromise. This not only makes the potential battlefield between the U.S. and Iran dangerous, but also puts neighboring countries in the region, such as Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey, on high alert. As a sworn enemy of Iran, Israel would almost certainly participate in any U.S.-led military operation if conflict with Iran broke out. According to numerous reports, intelligence, and statements from Israeli officials, preemptive airstrike plans targeting Iranian nuclear facilities have been prepared, awaiting activation. If this plan is implemented, the Middle East will enter a new era of chaos. Proxy wars in Gaza, Lebanon, or Syria will no longer be the main conflict zones. Instead, the entire region risks erupting into a full-scale war where nations directly deploy troops, mobilize air forces, and fire on a massive scale. An Israeli attack would not only provoke a reaction from Iran, but could also draw in a host of Tehran-backed proxy forces, turning the entire region into an unstoppable, all-out front. Amidst escalating tensions, every statement from President Maskian and President Donald Trump is being closely monitored by international intelligence agencies and military experts. A single statement, a single signal, can be the prelude to a military operation. The idea of a surprise attack is becoming a central topic of discussion within U.S. strategic circles. This is not only a warning to Iran, but also a message that Iran should not harbor illusions about its current geopolitical safety. However, a preemptive strike always carries inherent risks and potential for counterproductive effects. Instead of shaking Iran's internal political foundations, it could have the opposite effect, further uniting the people around the government in the name of defending their homeland against foreign aggressors. History has proven this in many modern conflicts, where external pressure did not lead to the collapse of the regime, but made it harder to overthrow than ever before. Modern warfare is no longer a simple gunfight between two armies. Each missile launched not only causes material damage, but also represents a life lost, a family shattered, and a future erased. However, in the pragmatic world of geopolitics, the language used by leaders is not dialogue, but power and violence. That is why tensions are escalating relentlessly. After decades of harsh economic sanctions from the United States, Iran is exhausted and reacting with increasing ferocity. Conversely, Washington cannot accept an Iran that is expanding its influence in Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, and the Gulf. In this confrontation, millions of ordinary people, without the power to decide or choose sides, are the first to suffer the consequences. The Iranian government's mass executions of civilians are considered one of the most shocking actions on the international stage at the moment. Under the guise of internal stability and suppressing rebellion, these extreme repressive measures have plunged Iranian society into a state of extreme fear and tension. However, these actions not only make Iran's internal situation fragile, but also increase the risk of external confrontation. If the United States, under the direction of President Donald Trump, were to launch a preemptive military attack, the reaction from Iran could be limitless. A full-scale war scenario is no longer a far-fetched assumption. When a nation is pushed to the brink and is willing to sacrifice civilians to maintain power, the risk of a regional conflict erupting on an uncontrollable scale is entirely possible. Let's wait and see what happens next. Our program concludes here. Please share your views and join the discussion with us.